Hi everyone, my name's Sochi Luna and I would like to welcome you to my new YouTube show. It's called Government and Politics, spelled with an X because that's the letter that my first name starts with, and I thought that would be clever, and I like to be clever. So this show is basically about not only explaining what's going on in the news, but relating that to the mechanisms of the US government, and it's a show for people who want to be more engaged in US politics and want to be able to keep track of what's going on, but need a little brushing up on how it is that these things are happening, how legislation is created, how each piece of legislation relates to things that we've done before, and what every piece of legislation means. And it's about more than legislation as well, but basically it ties in the mechanisms of the US government with what is going on today. So my first episode is going to be about one of the controversial events of the week, Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. So this bill has to do with Medicare, which a lot of people like to mix up with Medicaid. So the first thing I'm going to do is differentiate between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is something that the US government uses to provide health care to its older citizens. Medicaid is medical, basically monetary assistance for medical care of people who are of lower income families. So for all those people out there who are going to be like, oh, Medicare for all, that's welfare, oh no. Wrong. Medicare for all has nothing to do with welfare. It just has to do with who is paying for healthcare. Insurance companies, privatization, or the government. So the origins of Medicare and Medicaid trace back to Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Great Society program. It was basically a very liberal reform program that expanded the government's power over citizens. So the bill that Sanders is proposing reminds me a lot of the Great Society in that it is an expansion of government control. It would be a single payer system. So instead of having government and insurance companies paying together for healthcare, it would be just the government. So who supports it? Bernie Sanders, obviously, and Democratic senators, about 15 from states as small as Rhode Island to as big as New York and California. Kamala Harris, my very own senator in California. She's super cool. I'm a super big fan. She is one of the senators who's backing this particular bill. So what does it mean? The bill is a 4-year plan that would lower the age of Medicare from 65 to 55 to 45 until there was finally Medicare for all. It's a single payer system, as I mentioned earlier, which again does not mean that basically it doesn't mean that the government is gonna like take over hospitals or something crazy or like give welfare to everyone. No, it just means that instead of you paying the insurance company paying their employees, and then the insurance company helping pay for your health care, it means you're going to pay some more taxes to the government, and then the government is going to pay for you to get health care. And so some advantages of this are that basically you don't take out as much money for profit. So the government does not have to pay CEOs. Insurance companies do. So when you're paying the insurance company, it's a lot more expensive because you're also paying all of those people's big salaries. And in the government, you're still paying in part for that, but you're not paying quite as much as you would if you had a big business insurance company. So is that even allowed? That's what a lot of people are asking right now. They're like, can Bernie Sanders do this? Can the Democratic senators do this? Is this allowed? Is it allowed for the government to expand that much? Well, in some ways, yes. So the Constitution has this thing called the Necessary and Proper Clause, also known as the Elastic Clause, and it allows Congress to make all powers that are necessary and proper to make all laws necessary and proper to carry out its enumerated powers in the Constitution. This part of the Constitution is cited a lot when Congress is trying to expand the government's power. A lot of people think that it should be interpreted a little bit more strictly, but basically it ensures that even long after 300 years after the founders created the United States, that people would still be able to make the appropriate laws. Like Congress would still be able to make appropriate laws even if the Constitution didn't foresee that we needed Medicare for all law. So where's the money coming from? Tax increases is the simple answer. So basically what they want to do is they want to increase taxes. That's a classic Democratic thing. If you want to have more government programs, better government programs, you're going to need to raise taxes. But for some people, this would really lower the healthcare costs. Now, I'm not going to say that it applies to all people. In fact, for some people, the healthcare costs would probably go up. But I am going to say that overall, the healthcare costs would probably go down because, again, we're not paying for those big CEOs, we're not paying for the stockholders, we're just paying for healthcare, which seems to make a lot more sense. And it seems to also be a pretty nonpartisan issue. Like, people on both sides support the idea of everyone getting healthcare. Because why do you want the people of your country to have to avoid getting healthcare because they can't pay for it? Like, I know people who won't go into the emergency room because they're afraid that it's going to cost too much and the insurance isn't going to pay for it. And they're really sick, but they won't go in because they can't pay for it. So I think that's why it makes sense to a lot of people on both sides, is that it seems to be more of like a humanitarian issue. Although I'm not going to say it's not an economic issue. It definitely is, because, you know, you do have all of the tax increases that would be necessary to make this work. I'm not saying that, like, this could actually happen, because I think Bernie Sanders knows that this is not going to happen, at least not right now. It cannot pass a Republican-controlled Congress. The odds of that are so low that it's just almost insignificant. So why is he doing it then? What are the politics involved with this? So Republicans, as many of you may know, just tried and failed to repeal Obamacare. So what is Bernie Sanders doing with a bill that he knows that he cannot pass, especially when we just by a slim margin just kept Obamacare? Like, why would he propose something that's so radically left when clearly Congress is voting a little bit more to the right? It does make a point to the Democratic Party and to the public. So single payer is something that's been on a lot of people's minds recently. Like, what do we want for our healthcare system? Do we want a single payer system? Do we not want a single payer system? Do we want a privatized system? Do we want a government system? So Bernie Sanders doing this, and all of the senators backing it, and all of the people who are backing it, is making a point to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in the past election basically had this fight within itself where it was trying to decide if it wanted to be Bernie Sanders or if it wanted to be Hillary Clinton. And although this debate is a little bit over-polarized in some cases, it is an interesting one. Where is the party going from here? We have 2018, and then we have 2020. We're going to have another presidential race sooner than we know it. I say we, like I'm even registered to vote, but if I was, I'd be registered as a Democrat. So, basically, Bernie Sanders is not out to pass this bill. He knows he cannot pass this bill. However, he's out to hold up a giant sign to the Democratic Party that says, hey, people want single payer. People want Medicare for all. There is a good consensus between, like, multiple Democratic senators and multiple Democratic states that this is a viable option. And obviously it's not going to be as radical as what Bernie proposes, because what the Democratic Party does is never as radical as what Bernie proposes. We know Bernie. Bernie's going to propose something, and he realizes that the Democratic Party is going to go slightly to the right of it and do that. So what he's doing is basically raising an issue and making sure that the party knows that in 2018, in 2020, something that people are going to want to see from their candidates is, what are you going to do about healthcare? That's the question that people are going to be asking, in addition to, you know, what are you going to do about DACA? What are you going to do about tax reform? What are you going to do? But this is now one of the main issues. If it wasn't before, it definitely is now. And the new single-payer plan from Bernie Sanders and the Democratic senators has brought that into the spotlight. So that's the recap for the week of Bernie Sanders' new healthcare plan. I hope you guys learned something, either about how the U.S. government works or just about what's going on with this new healthcare plan. And I will be hopefully doing this show every week, so that'll be fun. All right, thanks for listening.